Akim. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rawchaa, Qadash. Double honors to the elder apostles of great Millstone who teach and rule well, and shalom to the sincere Akim, spreading truth and sincerity. Shalom. In this video, I want to talk about the relative new series on Disney Plus called Moon Knight, and I'm not going to spoil it too much, but within that movie, there are so-called Egyptian gods that so-called do exist and have the ability to influence things upon the earth by using avatars, which avatars are humans that are being used as vessels to basically fulfill the purpose of these gods upon the earth. And Moon Knight is the avatar of Kanshu, which is the Egyptian moon god, and he is the let me say it like this: he's basically the executioner of judgment concerning those that have made certain mistakes in their life. But they also have Ammit, which is also a so-called Egyptian god, which she's one of the first demons according to the series, and she's able to execute judgment upon those that have not even committed sins. So prior to those people committing sins, they have already Ammit is able to put them to death before they even commit sins, so that the sins won't even be committed. Meanwhile, Kanshu execute judgment upon those that have decided to steer away from the right path. And the thing that really stood out to me concerning Ammit is that one of her avatars, according to the series, was Alexander the Great. And that because of Ammit and the power that she was able to grant him, he was able to conquer the world. And that's something that I want to refute in this lesson, because even though it's a series, it's good for edification's sake to bring out the truth. So this is on the Marvel Cinematic Universe wiki concerning Alexander the Great, and it says alias Alexander the Great, voice of Ammit. So according to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in the time that Alexander the Great conquered a lot of nations upon the earth, he was the avatar of Ammit. It says Alexander III was a Macedonian ruler and conqueror who became known as Alexander the Great. While expanding the empire of ancient Greece, he became the pharaoh of ancient Egypt and was chosen by Ammit to be her avatar, although he betrayed her. So let me go into Ammit to get a little bit more information concerning her. This Egyptian deity. It says Ammit. Had Ammit been free, she would have prevented Hitler in the destruction he wrought, Nero, the Armenian genocide, Pol Pot, Arthur Harrow, to Stephen Grant. Ammit was a notorious Ennead worshipped by Arthur Harrow, and an Ennead is an Egyptian deity, but we know that that's all just idolatry. It's not real, because the only true living power is Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, which this word ignorantly calls God or Jehovah, but his real name is Yahawah, and the name of his son is Yahawashi, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus, or Yahushua, or Yeshua. It says, infamous for judging and punishing people before they could even commit any evil, Ammit was imprisoned by Kanshu and her fellow Ennead, being illustrated by Hero. Ammit was confronted by Kanshu, Moon Knight, and Scarlet Scarab after they imprisoned Ammit inside Hero's body. They both were killed by Jake Lockley under Kanshu's order. So yeah, I'm not going to spoil it too much, but here you have the information that she judges and punishes people before they can even commit any evil. Going on in the part of Alexander the Great, it says, building an empire, which we understand that Alexander the Great was the first king to rule over Greece. Alexander III was born and raised in Macedonia. He later became... Let me close this, man. It says Alexander III was born and raised in Macedonia. He later became the ruler of Macedonia and began conquering more of Greece. Becoming known as Alexander the Great, he eventually expanded his empire to Egypt and became its pharaoh. It says during his ruling of Greece and its conquest, Alexander III believed in and followed Ammit's vision of justice and was eventually chosen as her avatar. He was used by Ammit to observe human conflict. Later on, Alexander III became disillusioned with Ammit's method of justice and no longer believed in punishing sinners for crimes they haven't committed yet, and then soon betrayed her. So what you could see in the series is that with that power of Ammit, a lot of people were put to death. This man Hero, he had a staff in his hand, and by doing a couple of things, he was able to weigh those people's hearts in the balance, and therefore judging them according to their heart, whether they're good or evil. And if they would be bad, their soul would leave their body. So what actually is being mentioned is that because of the power that Ammit was able to give unto Alexander the Great, or Alexander III, he was able to conquer a vast amount of land in a very short time. Because if I'm correct, in only 12 years' time, he conquered most of the known world back then. It says Alexander the Great's impact on history was powerful and far-reaching, especially with regard to his conquering of the Achaemenid Empire, which is the Medo-Persian Empire, which the first to rule over the Medo-Persian Empire as a unified empire was Cyrus the Great. So yeah, this is more on the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not a lot of things are, of course, correct, because it remains a little bit of fiction. But what I want to bring out in this video is the fact that Alexander the Great became so powerful in a very short amount of time, was able to conquer a lot of land and nations, was not because of some idol called Ammit, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe brings out. Of course, we know it's fiction, but I want to bring out what actually did happen concerning Alexander the Great. So, this is Daniel chapter 4, verse 17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. So, through this verse we understand that the Most High decides what happens upon the earth. And he decides which king is going to be set up over an empire, or which king is going to be set up over a region, land, or nation. Through this verse we also understand that the Most High set up over the basest of men, which the basest of men refers to the Edomites, which in fact Alexander the Great was indeed an Edomite, which an Edomite in this day and age are the so-called white people upon the earth. So yeah, it's the Most High Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi that, made Alexander the Great who he was and made him able to conquer all the lands which he did. This is Daniel chapter 8, verse 1. In the 3rd year of the reign of King Belshazzar, a vision appeared unto me, even unto me Daniel, after that which appeared unto me at the first. So Daniel the prophet received a vision. Verse 2, and I saw in a vision, and it came to pass when I saw that I was a Shushan in the palace, which is in the province of Elam, and I saw in a vision, and I was by the river of Ulai. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, and behold, there stood before the river a ram, which had 2 horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. And this is referring to the Medo-Persian Empire. And if you go a little bit more in depth concerning these 2 horns, the horns themselves represent the one represents the Medes, and the other represents the Persians. And the one that came up last refers to the Persians, because through the Persians, which Cyrus the Great, he was a Persian. They were the ones to eventually take control of the Medo-Persian Empire, as a unified empire. Verse 4, I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward, so that no beast might stand before him, neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. And this eventually happened under the rulership of Cyrus the Great. The first king over the unified Medo-Persian Empire. You see, under him, under his rulership, the Achaemenid or the Medo-Persian Empire was established. Verse 5, and as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the he-goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And this is referring to the Grecians, to the Greek Empire. And that notable horn between his eyes is referring to Alexander the Great, which was the first king of the Grecians. And this was, years later after Cyrus the Great had already established the Medo-Persian Empire, because Alexander the Great eventually fought Darius III to eventually take down the Medo-Persian Empire. Verse 5 again, and as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had 2 horns, which I had seen standing before the river, and ran unto him in the fear of his power. So eventually the time came that the Medo-Persian Empire and the Greek Empire under rulership of Alexander the Great, would eventually collide and fight a war. Verse 7, and I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram, and brake his 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground, and stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. You see, so the time came that the Medo-Persian Empire came to an end. And after that, just like, Daniel already prophesied in the end of the 2nd chapter, that after the Medo-Persian Empire would another empire appear, which was the Greek Empire. That time came to pass. Verse 8, therefore the he-goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, for it came up 4 notable ones toward the 4 winds of the earth. So during the reign of Alexander the Great, during the Grecian Empire, which he was able to conquer a lot of territory in about 12 years. After a while, he became very sick and died. And after that, he distributed his kingdom to his 4 generals, which is Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus. They came up after him, and years after that, you had the Ptolemaic and the Seleucid Empire, established, that were actually standing. This is verse 20. The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Grecia, and the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. Now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power, because Alexander the Great, he left no seed that would eventually stand up in his place. You see, his kingdom was given unto his 4 generals, was not given to his own posterity. You see, which, if I'm correct, he didn't even have any posterity at all. But let me see. He had a son, Alexander the Fourth, but his son, who never stood up in his place to to rule the kingdom, but his generals did. You see. This is 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 1. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius the king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece, and made many wars and won many strongholds, and slew the kings of the earth. And that's what happened when the time came for Alexander to conquer most of the known world back then. Verse 3, and went through the ends of the earth, and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up. Yeah, he became very proud because of what he was able to accomplish. But he didn't do it by his own might. It all was through the spirit and power of Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi. Not like that, Marvel series brings out that it was because of some Egyptian deity named Ammit, with her power to judge people before they even commit any evil, and put them to death if they would eventually commit evil in the future. Verse 4, and he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. You see, so all the nations and countries that he conquered, which are most of those that were known, in the known world. Therefore, the Greek Empire was also a very well-known empire. They became tributaries unto him, and they had to pay certain taxes. They had to abide by certain laws. This is Psalms chapter 75 and verse 6. For promotion cometh neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south. But the Most High is the judge. He put it down in one and set it up another. So it's the Most High Yahawah, that decides whether a person is going to be set up as a king or whether you're going to receive promotion at your job. It's all in the hands of Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, you see. And that the thing is. So Rawchaa, this lesson, was edifying. And with that, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, Bahasham, Yahawashi, Bahasham, Rawchaa, Qadash. Double honors to the elder apostles of great Millstone who teach and rule well, and shalom to the sincere Akim, spreading truth and sincerity. Shalom.